Hi everybody, welcome back to Jinka Jabo. Today we're going to talk about guns. That was insipid. I'm sorry about that. I'm not going to make light of this, but what else can I do? Even the comedians, they're the ones who are blubbering and crying. Jimmy Kimmel, in tears. I don't know. I hate to say it, but as someone who grew up in a land of mass shooting, where every year it was some new story, which, it just keeps going and going. Year after year, there's always someone new. I'm certainly kind of numb to it now. Although there is that fantasy, that nightmare in the back of every American's head that they might be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Whether it's a public school or a movie theater or a hotel or casino or whatever, I guess, anywhere that people congregate where there is risk of something like that happening. So I'm not going to start blubbering, but I am going to talk about something that was on my mind and something that I was talking about until right up before this last incident. And check the date on this video, but this can apply to any incident. Kind of like, The Onion has that joke where every time there's a mass shooting, they run the same article that they've been running since the 90s. And it does add some levity, but it's also, I don't know. Like, I'm one of those people, I'm one of those assholes online who makes fun of things right away when they happen. But I don't do it out of hostility, it's more out of just mercy. I don't know. It's just this feeling like this. Mark Twain said it best when he said that humor is the only real accurate weapon that we have as a race. But anyway, getting quite dark, and of course it's a dark topic today because I wanted to talk about guns, and the reason I'm wearing my Communist Pride shirt here, which you can get any street corner here in Hanoi, is that gun control is actually one of the few issues where I'm still very left-wing. And I want to start out by just that quote from Stefan Molyneux that everyone was passing it around, which claims that with gun control you are giving power to a central authority, which is not exactly what he said. I don't have it out in front of me right now, but most of you who are following any right-wing pages have seen it. The main argument that right-wingers have made about gun control is that we shouldn't give that much power to a central authority, that we shouldn't have the government deciding that. That to have gun control to make things illegal is to put the government's nose in our business. When it does say explicitly in our Constitution that we do have the right to keep and bear arms, not the right to keep an arm bears. Okay, so again, it's so hard to find levity, it's so hard to find humor in this topic. But I have been studying international politics more and more, especially since I've been red-pilled, and I've become more and more on the side of gun control. You can tell me about how great socialized medicine might be in the UK or somewhere, and I really don't see that. But when I look at just the cold numbers of our own country and our obsession with guns and everything, it's just one of those marks in America that I don't fully understand, and I think it does stretch all the way up to our arms industry, right up to Lockheed Martin. I think, I'm not into conspiracy theories or any of this, but I do know that lots and lots of money goes into that industry. And I've even been offered jobs, work with companies through these very high profit Saudi arms dealers and all this, but my conscience would not allow me to do that. I'm a CEO, I think, and I'm glad that I have not been in a position where I've had to avoid a draft, but I certainly would have accepted it. Whether it was jail time, probably jail time before moving to Canada. I mean, not to diss Canada or anything, but I don't want to go anywhere cold. Of course, in this alternate reality, I might be someone who does enjoy the cold weather. but I would be a CO, and just like in that great 70s action flick, Death Wish. When they see he's an excellent marksman, he's just sort of natural at it. The guy at the gun range says, "Oh, so you were a CO?" And he's like, "Yeah, I was CO." And he's like, "So commanding officer?" But when really Charles Bronson's character meant conscientious objector, which is what I would be. In my life, I've only touched a gun once, and it was a gun that was actually stolen from a St. Paul police officer. This is public video, right? I am putting this on my... But that's part of a different reality, different place, different time. And I've never had really the urge to pick up guns. But I think if someone invited me, if it ever came up someday, I would go to a firing range just to see it, just to know what it was like. But I'm in no hurry to do that any more than I am in a hurry to go parachuting, which is something that I almost tried before I went to Saudi Arabia. And then my dad pointed out to me, well, if you're going to be jumping out of airplanes and going to the Middle East, why don't you just join the military? So I'm trying to orient my life away from military, but away from this whole personal tangent. So you understand that personally I have an aversion to guns. I just think that it's sort of like when you're standing on a tall building and some dark little corner in your head tells you to jump. It's kind of like that. I think if I had a gun, there would be so much... Not that I would use it, but just the fact that it was there would just sort of darken the area. I wouldn't feel safer. I guess if I lived in a country or if I lived in a very high crime area, it would make sense. One great myth about Vietnam is that it's supposed to be full of crime. It's this stereotype that we have about Southeast Asia, which I actually think is kind of racist. Listen to me sounding like a total pinko communist tonight. It must be the shirt. It must be warping my brain. Anyway, my thought on gun control is that we need to do what Australia did. Because in Australia they had their only, probably maybe not their only one, but the mass shooting there at this very popular tourist area, and they decided we can't be like America. We have to do something about our guns, and this was in 1996. And so what they did is they offered citizens, $800 a piece for their guns, and they bought back a huge supply of Australia's guns, and not all of them, but many of them, as my Aussie friends have pointed out, are in bunkers out in the, what do they call it, the down under, the outback. Well, I really don't know too much about Australia, but I do know that this gun control thing actually kind of worked. And I think that if we did that in America, it would really work. I think people would trade in their guns for the money. You say $800 a gun, how are we going to do that? We have more guns than we have people. But just look at the trillions of dollars that we throw away on false wars and stuff like that, or the housing crisis or anything. We could come up with the money. And there would be people who would make money doing it, and so it would flow directly back into our economy anyway. So you might say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I just think that something needs to be done about guns in our country. It's horrible. This is like I think it's the second big shooting where I've been overseas. And remember, the first one was the one in Denver, which is weird because I was just in Denver just a few months after it happened. And, and at that time I was in Taiwan, and my students asked me about it. And that's one thing where, as an American, I just stand there feeling just down and depressed about myself and my country. But I think that there is a solution to it, and there is something that we need to change. And maybe I wouldn't agree that we need to go to pass new legislation and all that. And I think that our Constitution needs to be defended. Of course, especially I believe in the First Amendment, but they're all important rights that we have that set us apart from other countries in the world. So I don't think legislation's really a smart idea. I think we need to buy the guns back. We need to get the money, and we need to just put them in a big heap, just like that Simpsons episode, and just destroy them all. And of course, people, without taking away the rights of people to have them, because no matter what, we'll always have separate sovereign nations, militias, bunkers in places like Montana, where people just stockpile guns or whatever. And it's sort of like a hoarding thing. It's like an obsession thing. I don't know. It's like some men just collect guns, and I think that's kind of weird. I don't know. But I lived with this lady in Wisconsin who had a pistol, and I even saw it, and it was just so weird. She was just renting out her room, and I was just there temporarily for school. And the other time I saw a gun was in China, communist China of all places. Chairman Mao, right? And I was tutoring this, I think it was fifth or sixth grader, and his dad's handgun was just sitting there, and it looked real. I took a photo of it, in fact. But who's to say where that is? I just don't get it. What's so great about guns? I mean, but I still like Hollywood movies and all that. And I just can understand what's fiction, what's real. And anyone who's been to a war museum anywhere in the world, you know, I mean, even something as small as that, shouldn't that change you? I mean, shouldn't we be working towards a nonviolent world? Which is why we won't get rid of guns simply by banning them, telling people they can't have them. That'll just create more and more backlash, as it does throughout any temperance or prohibition movement in the states. It just creates more crime. But we have to replace it with something else. We need bake sales for guns or something. I don't know. But we need to buy the guns back. We need to find something to fill that really bizarre, dark void that we have in our hearts. And gosh, even talking about it now, I find myself thinking of, Bowling for Columbine and the few good points that it made. Now, they've debunked, as you can see on Steven Crowder's channel, the whole gun show loophole. It's actually a bit difficult to get a gun in the States unless you know somebody. But like the kids at Columbine, they knew somebody. But that whole scenario, I think Columbine, I remember it because I was in high school when it happened. And I think that's when people started politicizing tragedies like this. That's the first one I can remember. Of course, maybe there probably were others before that time. That's the one that really sticks out to me as a time when, before the blood was even dry, there was talk of guns. And Bill Clinton at the time was pushing for gun control and trying to get all this done. And people were freaking about the Second Amendment. And this is shortly after Oklahoma City, which I guess, I don't think it was politicized as much, even though Timothy McVeigh had read the Turner Diaries and he was obsessed with America taking away our Second Amendment, because that's what that fiction book is about. People read these shit books and turn into insane psychopaths, If one book can turn you on that much, then why not read a few others? You know what I mean? Get the most from each. It's like you're playing Mega Man, but you're just happy with just having the one power. Come on. Was that a good analogy? I'm quite tired. It's Sunday night here, and I do have to work in the morning, but I just wanted to make a quick video yapping about guns because I just heard Secular Talk, Kyle's long rant where he kind of shrieks and screams and he makes fun of Alex Jones while kind of emulating Alex Jones, and it made me realize, I'm not a complete Republican. I guess I'm just a centrist. I don't know. I'm like a red-pilled right-wing socialist for Bernie or something. Who knows, man? Like, it's all completely muddled up, and every time they take some strategy, or who knows, man? It's all completely muddled up, and every time they take some tragedy and politicize it, it puts us in a situation where politics begin to mean nothing, but it's just symbols and representations, and it has nothing to do with who people really are, or what suffering is really happening in the world. turning our frogs gay, putting fluoride in the water.